Amazing. Hello, hello, and welcome to Neurodiversity Conversations. I am so chuffed that you're here with us today, and I'm absolutely delighted and honoured that my lovely friend Narinder has agreed to be my very first guest on Neurodiversity Conversations. And I'm so excited for her to share her lived experience with you all. So thank you for being here. And Narinder, hello, thank you so much to you for being here.
Thank you, Tasmin, for having me.
Okay, lovely. So, should we dive in? Should we dive in? Can you tell everybody who's listening to our neurodiversity conversation today just a little bit about you?
Sure.
Who is Narinder?
Yeah, who am I? And you know, every time I share stories, I find that I share something different every time. You know, as a chronic pain and mindset coach, my mindset was very different years ago, having been a lawyer in the corporate world for 15 years, having masked a lot. I didn't really know what was happening with me, if I'll be honest with you, Tamsin. And I feel like it's this when we hit a challenge in our life, like this brick wall, it's like, is it my doing? Is it my fault? Or is it something happening to me that cause and effect that happens in our life? And I had to keep on revisiting myself, my own personal development. And it wasn't, and what's interesting is, and I hear this from clients, and it so resonates with me. I had a client a couple of weeks back, and she goes, Narinder, I thrive off chaos. Where basically she's really good in those scenarios and practical. And it took me back to 2012, and I remember I was asked to join this company. And at the time, I thought I was going to be alongside another senior leader. But what transpired is that senior leader abruptly left the firm. I ended up having to cover a whole team, two teams, and one remotely somewhere else in an office. But I thrived. And it was the first time I had to question and go, I'm thriving off the chaos. You know, there was no micromanagement, no lack of trust. It was like everybody was in it together. And this is when I went down to London, actually, and I went for one of those neuro-linguistic program, weekends. And something hit me about my beliefs about what was it that made up me. There's this phrase about, are you a cat or are you a dog? And, if you're a dog, which scenario is it in family or friends or work? And it got me thinking of, where am I? Where do I belong? And what is happening in my life? And it slowly transpired that obviously coaching was something I was passionate about. I found that it enhanced my thinking. It helped me help others in a way energetically, compassionately. And the reason I fell into that route is because I remember when in my early 20s, I used to be spoken to in such an aggressive manner. I felt stupid. I felt I wasn't good enough, and I accepted it. Don't know about you, Tams, but I accepted this kind of cruel taunts that I don't think they were aware of it as they were supervisors. But it was that fact of when I asked the question when I left that firm, it's interesting. They said this is how they were supervised. This is what they thought was acceptable. And when you're young, you're impressionable, you want to do well. You don't want to rock the boat because you're fearful. And every time I was going to each organization, something within me felt hollow. It didn't feel like I was belonging. Even when I qualified as a lawyer and I got to that journey, I was like, is that it? Like, please don't let it be that the end. I've spent so much money and time on my education, yet it felt like this wasn't the right thing. And I carried on doing it because there were parts of the role that I really thrived off. But I don't think I really understood that I could clearly see myself, the strengths, that the whole I knew that I was great with relationships. I knew my clients were like my friends. I was honest in that sense. I was joyful, but I remember having this burnout that I probably was never aware of. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, I felt demotivated. And there were times when, and I think we spoke about this just before we came on, but it was like, and I have clients like this where I was working and I was organizing a charity ball whilst I was studying for my first professional coaching. And I made time for that. And it was like my brain needed more than just doing the work. It was like, what were these outside passions that were helping me? Like, why was that happening? And
That's so interesting. That's so interesting.
and I keep going back to that because here I was in an organization, still not feeling belonging. I felt that the role was constricting me. Like I need to be this free kind of person, but it felt like fixated. Um, Another thing I started to notice is if there were to-dos on a case management system, my brain wouldn't allow me to look at that and tick them off. I had to do it in my way. Like I had a lot of litigation and trial and deadlines, but I had to do it my way, my diary system. So when others saw that, they were like, gosh, Narinder's way behind. But that wasn't the reality. And I thought, I'm just not going to be understood. And the patterns kept repeating wherever I went, thinking, this is, I lacked that self-compassion. And I berated myself all the time. Why can't you be organized? Why can't you just do it like everyone else? They're doing it. Why can't you? And so you go into this spiral of feeling not good enough. That imposter syndrome kept creeping in. And the turning point for me, and it was really interesting. 2017, even before then, actually, 2015. I remember my dad was dying of cancer. He got this diagnosis, and it was really, traumatic for me. But I thought I was in this crossroad, this sliding doors moment. Oh, I could leap up the career ladder because I was doing a lot of training nationally, and like they say, go to all these other offices, make yourself visible. But it was my father. It was a no-brainer. I had to look after him, and I quit working for a couple of months. Now, this is a time when I just got married, you know, and it wasn't the right time because I wanted to save for a house and that, but that was more important to me. And what transpired even out of that, it's really interesting. So 2017 comes, and I would look at timelines now because this is the trajectory that happened. 2017. The day after my father's funeral, I get a call from the manager saying, sorry. And I was off on maternity leave at this point, right? I had been at this workplace only 3 or 4 months before I fell pregnant unplanned. And I was lucky enough to spend a lot of time with my father for consultations. And so I had time. And then when I had this phone call, the manager goes that unfortunately there's redundancies and you're going to have to re-interview for your job. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've got a baby, 9 month old. My father's died. I didn't say anything. I thought, fine, that's okay. So I go into the workplace and I'm panicking, thinking, these colleagues of mine are very experienced. I lack the experience. I lack anything. How am I going to survive this? I went into the workplace where I didn't have a team at that point because I'd just come back from work. Nobody came up to me. Nobody showed any compassion. I never reached out. I did get an apology from the manager, but what was happening is, I mean, I was lucky that I got through that re-interview, but I used to cry in the toilets because I knew who was leaving. And these were people that had been there for years, and I felt guilty that I was taking their livelihood. But I wanted it so bad so I could save for a house, so I could give now my daughter at the time, everything that we could do. And I used to started suffering migraines in 2017. And I remember it wasn't every weekend, but I just thought I'm run down. I've got this team I'm emotionally invested in. I've got a baby. My identity's changing again. And I couldn't understand what it was. I just thought, yeah, it's just one of those things and accepted it. And then I go off on my second maternity. I mean, I had my son in the car, another trauma on my body. I was advised by midwives, even on the third phone call, that I'm panicked, my waters have broken. They were like, stay put. And it was a trauma on the body. Thankfully, they changed all their processes after I made a complaint. But again, 7 months later, I wake up with a niggle in my ankle. And there's no rhyme or reason why. There's no injury, no accident. And what transpired is I ended up having chronic pain, a disc prolapse where I could hardly walk or stand. But in reality, I was in denial that I
Mm.
wasn't moving a lot. I was feeling low. My mood was really
Mm.
low. And and I don't know whether you feel this way, Tamsin, but I have all the love in the world from people around me, but I still feel alone. Like I'm still misunderstood, even though that's not the reality. But those intense emotions that come over you, it's like, where do you go with that? And in my chronic pain, I started journaling. I started sharing that emotion, but I started sharing with people that understood that struggle as well, which helped me through that difficult, excruciating period where we're in lockdown, we're socially isolated. And I felt like I'd lost who I actually was mentally, emotionally, and physically of who am I? And so that self-discovery, actually, it was a pain. I'd say it was my gift. Because if it didn't debilitate me, would I have carried on as normal? Would I have carried on in my legal world, battling with the demons in my head? And I think I would have.
Do you?
Or something would have transpired. Maybe, it was weird. 2015 is when I genuinely wanted to quit what I was doing and I wanted to set up my business. I had a lovely business card called Coach Yourself Smart Networking. But I was pregnant at the time, and my father obviously was going through cancer, and I thought this isn't the right time for me. I had my shiny certificate from back then, and you're up and running and motivated, but I thought I'm not in the right headspace. I'm not in the right headspace to do what I need to do. And it took me that 7 years was fear, not good enough. And really, that's where that chronic pain was stopping my tracks, saying you have to change something in your life. And that's when that whole transformation began of actually, I know what I've got to do. If I can heal myself through support with this chronic pain, then I know there's bigger and better things to come. And that's what exactly I did. It took a while to do that. It wasn't an overnight thing, but I started to learn about the neuroscience. I started to learn about myself and about why this was happening. And I even actually went on another course, with Optimus, with the neuroscience and positive psychology, just to give me that added extra. But weirdly, before I even started that course, I bought 3 books.
Did you? What were they?
Nancy Klein, Time to Think,
Yeah.
James Clear, Atomic Habits, and Carol Dweck.
Okay.
So it was bizarre. It felt like and I don't know whether you get this, times in the universe is just saying, here you
This
go.
is it. Yeah.
And that moment was like, I have to do something. And I did dip myself back into the law. Strangely, the last law firm, I was only there on a contractual basis, but they got rid of me, actually. They actually got rid of me.
They're
And they
lost.
said,
They're lost.
but it was interesting. Why it was interesting is that the words they used was, you have a lack of understanding. And I'm very vocal. So I was very much like, uh, if I have a lack of understanding, what about the whole department that has a real fear and lack of understanding? And I had shared with them what was the problems. But like my husband says, you don't know how to play the game. And I'm like, what game? What is this game that people play? And when I left, one of my former colleagues had called me up and said, do you know what, Narinder, they've changed the whole processes. They have given extra training. A lot of some of the juniors had reached out to me saying, that we've got this fear, we've got these templates, we don't understand. So they were doing things without understanding. And I am grateful that I had that experience, because I was at that point anyway, but I needed that like bit of catalyst. Sometimes you need that. And I'm grateful. And what it's led me to is be able to talk about my shared experience in terms of chronic pain, but also neurodiversity, because, I was curious as, do I have any neurodiverse traits? And thankfully, with Genius Within last year, they did a in-depth assessment. And I always thought, what it transpired is that the visual and non-verbal reasoning is where I are my weakest points. I struggle with practical tasks if I do them first time. If you gave me a flat pack, I won't know how to do it, and I struggle. I think, gosh, why am I struggling? And it made sense. It's like If someone told me to do something and it's a bit complex, my brain wouldn't comprehend. You'd have to break it down, or I'd want to shadow you. And I thought that's interesting. And I took even the Genius Finder, and I realized my strength is movement. My strength is this, the verbal.
Yeah.
And I thought, and I wrote it down because I thought I have to work towards that more strength.
Mm.
And only this week, like I was saying to you, Tamsin, I was at a medical conference with Peak Health Coaching, who gave me a perfect opportunity to co-deliver a workshop. And who was the lady sitting in the audience? Only the woman that helped me heal all those years ago.
Wow. And isn't that just the universe just coming back round?
It felt like a surreal moment that I could not even just comprehend that 5 years ago she's an international speaker. I saw her at her own conference two weeks before that, and I thought, wow, I didn't even know. And I felt so humbled that I can give back now, like my purpose is aligned with that I can align with certain healthcare or lived chronic, and I can create opportunities for them through the work I do with the online pain cafe, where we bring people from all diverse backgrounds. And I think even coaching now clients with neurodiverse and chronic pain, I can resonate. Do you know, when they share something, and I don't get in their box, but I have to reflect afterwards and go, gosh, I can really relate. And I don't know whether you get that, Tamsin, because it's like, wow, this is where I belong, where I hadn't
And do you
felt.
know what? It's so interesting you said that, because I've written down, I've circled. You said right at the very beginning, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for sharing all of that story. It's such a beautiful journey, and so lovely to kind of, hear how that one individual helped you 5 years ago, and then they're sitting there listening to you talking. For them, that must have been such a wow, look how far she's come. That's just amazing. So thank you for sharing that story. But something I've written down here is you said right at the very beginning, who am I and where do I belong? And so who are you now and where do you belong now, today, here with me?
Wow. And who am I? Yeah. It's interesting because who am I now is not that masked version.
No.
It's an empathetic individual. It's one that does show self-compassion for self first, before anyone else, because self-care, in my self-care toolkit, it's about respecting me, respecting my energy, and not people pleasing like I've done for so many years to suit everyone else. That my worth matters. So it's someone who's an advocate for change, for fairness, for justice.
Yeah. Hurrah to that. Absolutely. And something else you mentioned, where you said your husband turned around to you and said you just need to play the game. And I know for a lot of people who are going to be listening to this, and possibly, I suppose, maybe autistic individuals, or a lot of neurodivergent individuals, when they hear that phrase, just need to play the game, what is the game? What on earth would that be? Kind of, how would you, for someone that's thinking that, I don't know what you mean by that. I don't know what is that? How
So
would you?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting for me. I mean, I need to be honest. I'm very honest. So I can't see if there's an agenda by people. But what my husband says is, well, they fudge it. Although it's not specifically lying, but they'll do it so that it fits or suits what that supervisor needs or that manager needs. And they could be not great at their job, but as long as they get that job done, and which doesn't align with me, whereas I believe in honesty. I need understanding. I can't just, if you gave me a template and you said just do it, my brain would not deal with that. I need to know, why are we doing, what's the purpose for doing that? I need to know that my brain to understand, because if I'm doing it and just get it done, it doesn't align. Something then trickles in my nervous system to say this doesn't feel right.
I always talk about, if anyone that's been coached by me, you'll know that I talk about this, the 3 W's, the what, the when, and the why. We need to know what we need to do, when we need to do it by, but why are we doing it? What's the why behind it? kind of that's kind of, I think that's what you're saying. I need to know the
Well,
why.
yeah, why?
Why is really important.
Whereas I couldn't understand it, and because my husband's a contractor, so he's been in numerous roles and understands how that works. He creates work for himself. He said, "This is how it is," but I said, "Not in my head. It's not in my world." But I've been surrounded with people like that. How many people have we come across? And when I do coach, individuals who've got autism, but their strengths, they don't even see them. And then they have this honesty about them that is like, gosh, I wish I could project it to your employees to see you are good enough. You're amazing, actually. You're more than amazing because you're saying it to me and I understand perfectly. They always say, does it make sense? Of course it makes sense.
Isn't that honesty just so refreshing? I love it. I love it. It's, yeah, so important. Narinder, I can talk to you for hours, and there's so much stuff that you've shared with us that I would love to unpick with you, but I'm very conscious of time. So I just would love to know, do you have, based on everything you've been through and kind of everything that's led to you being the wonderfully amazing person who's sitting in front of me today, what are your key reflections, I suppose? And I suppose what I'm really looking for is, what, to the younger people who are listening to this, or to anybody listening to this who's thinking, oh my gosh, what a journey you've been on, what would you like to share with them about their journey?
I'd like to say that actually don't cope alone. If you feel you're struggling in a professional setting, say you're working from home a lot more and you can't reach out because you don't feel that there's any trust, find someone in that organization who may not be part of that team, who you can really support. I mean, there's a lot of charities out there as well, Mind, or organizations that can support you, even coaching support if it's available. Because I think struggling by yourself is detrimental to your mental health. And I can say that on a personal level because I've always coped by myself. And I suppose I've had an adverse childhood experience, which has led to me not being having an outlet when I was young. Because you don't know, when you're a child, you can't emotionally regulate. So as you're getting older, you you don't see any difference. So that struggle becomes the norm. But what's happening is internally, it's going to be affecting your sleep. It's going to be affecting what you're eating. Your lifestyle starts to becoming, gosh, that catastrophization, and it starts to boil down to affecting relationships. So there's a downward spiral. And I would say, actually, check in, like, what are your strengths? Really remind yourself, ask a friend, ask a couple of friends if you feel safe enough, ask family members who are non-judgmental. Who am I? What makes up me? When people say, people used to say to me, Narinder, you're great at coaching. And I go, yeah, they're just being nice. But actually, if it's happening a couple of times, they're saying the same thing, take it on board. And if there are challenges, where can you seek support for those challenges? If it's workplace, is it coming from that manager who's not self-aware, or that team leader? And maybe they need to work on themselves, but how can you start to even have a difficult conversation? What can make it easy for you? Where can you start? And not be afraid to feel like you have to work even long hours just to accommodate, because that will downward go to burnout and stress.
There's some really great tips there, thank you. And I don't know about you, but I always find when I get a compliment, I feel like I need to justify it. Like it's oh, well, someone said to me the other day, oh, I like your jacket. And I was like, oh, it's only cheap. Like, why didn't, and as I was driving away, I was thinking, why didn't I just say thank you?
Because it's difficult. It's difficult, isn't it? It's good it's all right for us to compliment genuinely, but when we get it, it's like it feels a bit icky. But I think embracing that a lot more, to just say, yeah, I am good enough. I am. Thank you.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, thank you so much for our conversation today. Thank you so much for coming onto Neurodiversity Conversations. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm so grateful to have you here. Thank you. Is there anything final that you would like to share with my audience?
I just want to say thank you, Tamsin. This has been a wonderful conversation and felt at ease. And I think anyone listening, please get in touch with Tamsin, because I think she's an amazing friend, but coach. And, you know, sometimes we don't realize what we need until we reach out for that support. Might be just first step.
So much. Oh, thank you for being here, and I'll obviously tag you in everything that I put out as well, so thank you.
Thank you, Tamsin.
So thank you for listening to Neurodiversity Conversations today. I really hope you have enjoyed our conversation and enjoyed hearing Narinder's story, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.